I would like to welcome you to the candidate forum for the Rochester City Council Northwest Quadrant. My name is Barbara Grosh, and I'm president of the host of this candidate forum, that is the League of Women Voters of the Rochester metro area. The League is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse either parties or candidates. Instead, what we do is try to help voters be well informed. And so I'd like to thank both of the candidates who will be with us tonight for agreeing to make themselves available for this forum and to help voters get to know them as candidates. This recording will be recorded. This forum is being recorded, and it will be on the League of Women Voters YouTube channel. We will also email out a link to the recording to all the attendees and all who had registered in advance. That should happen within a day or two. And we do have closed captioning available. If you need that, you can click on the bottom of your screen where it says show captions. And at this point, I would like to introduce tonight's moderator, Karen Morris. Judge from the town of Brighton will be moderating tonight. So thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Good evening, all. So the League of Women Voters has prepared questions to ask the candidates, but we'd like to get questions from you. If you have any questions you'd like both candidates to answer, please put them in the Q&A that you'll find at the bottom of your screen. All questions will be asked of both candidates. Now it's time to meet the candidates in the order that they will be speaking. I will call on them alphabetically by last name. Our timekeeper this evening is Judy Weinstein. She will hold up cards that will let the candidates know how much time they have left and when their time is up. Yellow indicates a 30 seconds, and red indicates that 15 seconds for yellow. And with red, that indicates that the time is up. The candidate can complete his or her sentence, but then must be done. And correction, our timekeeper this evening is Judy Sternberg. So now it's time to meet the candidates and hear their opening remarks. Each candidate has 1 minute. So I will begin with Frank Chiofetlassi. He will have 1 minute. He has unmuted and on himself and shown us his face. And now you may begin your opening statement.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Frank Chiofetlassi. I am the Democratic endorsed candidate running for City Council in the Northwest. I am the son of Laotian refugees, Northwest born and raised, and been in the Northwest for my entire life. I am a Rochester City School District graduate, having attended elementary in the Northwest at 30 School and high school at Wilson. For college, I attended MCC in Brockport, where I received my bachelor's degree in political science. Professionally, I have worked in the New York State Assembly for the Rochester Mayor's Office, and I'm currently the Deputy Clerk of the County Legislature. In 2019, I was elected into the Monroe County Legislature to represent the 28th Legislative District, where I became the first Asian American elected official in Monroe County history. On City Council, I want to do the same things that I did on the county legislature, and that was fight and advocate for jobs and workforce development, youth engagement, and community safety. And my goal is to always be accessible and active for the community, and I will maintain that, and that is my plan as I continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And now our second candidate, meet Bridget Monroe. And Bridget, you have 1 minute.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity to debate. Certainly debate is critical to a healthy democracy. So I bring to this race nearly 25 years of experience in local government, most of that with the city of Rochester. I worked as a legislative analyst for City Council from 1998 to 2014. Then I moved over to the administration and served on the senior management team for 4 years. And currently, for these past 4.5 years, I've been working as the assistant to the Brighton Town Supervisor. So I have a wealth of experience and policy expertise that I can bring to this position. And that, combined with my deep commitment to improving the Northwest, makes me the best candidate for this office.
Thank you. Our first question, and it will go to Bridget for starters. What do you view as the most important issue for the City Council to address in the coming year? You have 1.5 minutes.
Okay, so I have to get that down to one issue. I think at a base of a lot of it, what's happening now, and obviously even touching onto some of the violence that's been happening, is that people have to have quality housing. I want to be able to improve housing as well as create more opportunities and pathways for home ownership. Through that, people are able to build some generational wealth and also have a more stable life. That amount of stability on every street is also helpful then in creating community where people know who their neighbors are, they know who the kids are playing on the street, and you're able to just have a more cohesive group. The other piece is, to continue then with the low income housing that some of the nonprofit developers are doing, and to be able to switch some of that rental into home ownership will be critical to this.
Thank you. Frank.
I think the most important issue, and this may be kind of cheating, but is to improve the quality of life for the constituents in the Northwest. I've been knocking on doors for the last 8 years, and the concerns have remained the same. I want to be able to feel safe. I want to be able to pay my bills. I want to be able to raise my children and have community. I think that's the goal. I think that's our role as city council members, is how we can make life easier for individuals that depend on us to, whether it's make laws or analyze the budget and invest resources in the community. That's the goal. How do we as council members make life better and improve the quality of life for everybody in the Northwest?
Thank you. Next question goes to Frank first. Housing was referenced, so let's go there for a moment. What ideas do you have for the creation of housing for those who cannot afford so-called affordable housing?
I think that it's important for us to analyze different ways and methods and take advantage of the resources and land that we have. I believe a start could be utilizing community land trust and building properties that can really help maybe small local landlords to be able to live in the neighborhoods and communities that they rent out to. I think that's huge. That's important. I think a lot of the struggles that we see with landlords and housing tend to be because landlords don't care a lot of times, or they're somewhere far away. I think we need to flip some of the vacant properties and zombie properties and just utilize the space. Something that I'm excited about and that I've been hearing about is that the tent city redevelopment on Lyle and Dewey, they're putting $1.5 million into it through the state to kind of clean it up. That'd be a great piece of land to build some housing in, make sure we have some affordable housing in, and just bring some new development into the Northwest. I think just different ideas on how we can promote the space that we have and grow it.
Thank you. Bridget.
Is it possible to repeat the question?
Certainly. What ideas do you have for the creation of housing for those who cannot afford so-called affordable housing?
I think that what comes into play there is working with the variety of nonprofits that are specifically working on low income housing, And there are ways to be able to target that towards even lower. It's set on the median income, but there are ways to be able to target it first at folks who have the lowest income, so that they will be able to get that housing to make those rentals. That's a huge piece of it. I think the movement with the tiny homes has been useful. I mean, we have some in the city, and I think that that's something that could be expanded upon, see how it's functioning for people now, and then replicated. I think that finding programs and initiatives that are doing well those are important to replicate, and having any data from a previous project is very helpful.
Okay. One more somewhat related question. The neighborhoods which were redlined by lenders in the 1930s remain blighted and starved of investment. What should the city do to foster well-being in the residents of these neighborhoods? Bridget.
That is a hard one. I know there have been efforts to talk to some of the existing banks that had participated in the redlining, to see if we could get more funding to help the residents and or help the housing stock itself. I'm hopeful that there could be more CRA, the Community Reinvestment Act funds that could come from some of the financial institutions to be able to help out with that. And continuing to make people aware of that there are reasons why things are the way they are today. It's not just happenstance. There's been a very coordinated effort to marginalize poor people, to keep them in certain areas, and to separate people by races. So it's not an accident, and it's something that we have to work hard to undo.
Thank you. Frank.
I think the first step is to have the city and county acknowledge that this is an issue. This is a systemic structural issue that has existed and we're still to this day struggling with. I was fortunate enough to sit on the race commission when I was on the county legislature, and that kind of opened my eyes on the disinvestment and the redlining that really happened in the inner city Crescent area. And that's where we really see struggle, and we're still seeing struggle to this day because of that. And until we start stepping up to make action and reinvest in the community and acknowledge that this was intentional, I don't think we can make change in the area. But I do have hope that we can involve community into reinvestment into the area. We can start fighting for more money into areas that haven't seen money, especially us here in the Northwest. I think there's portions of the Northwest and the Lyle Otis community that I live in, we don't see a lot of investment. And part of it is probably connected to the redlining that we have seen over the last forever.
Okay. Frank, you'll go first on this next question. This comes from our audience. How do you plan on addressing the needs and barriers that exist in the refugee population in the Northwest District?
So the refugee population in the Northwest is huge. I know that personally, and a lot of the work that I personally have done, whether it was before County Ledge or on County Ledge, was to bring resources in for some of the organizations. Right on Lexington, we have Mary's Place, who helps with refugees resettling. And then across the street, we have Rochester Refugee Resettlement. And they both do great work in the Northwest, but they need resources and help and support and making sure we have housing that is up to date and that refugees with language barriers are taken care of. When I was in the city working in the mayor's office, I helped spearhead the New Americans Advisory Council, which took in several refugee communities and gave them a voice and a platform in city government, never seen before. And that's the kind of initiative that I want to continue to do. I think I can bring that into city council if I can be elected, and we really can give them an ear, because representing a district is all about the people, and you need to have a voice for the people. And unfortunately, language barriers kind of make refugee voices unheard, but we need people who are intentional in addressing that And that's what I want to do and will continue to do.
Thank you. Bridget.
Sure. Certainly the work that Mary's Place and the Rochester Refugee Center are doing has been amazing, and they're fairly small groups. One of the ways to be able to help that is not only in any way that I'd be able to help in expanding the volunteer pool that really helps undergird a lot of the efforts that are happening, such as Catholic Family Charities, I know does a lot of work in that regard, but to also help with, grant writing or other things of that nature that would give both those organizations the ability to have some more dedicated staff, whether that can be internships, unpaid or paid internships, but kind of utilizing the additional resources that the city has and the know-how of getting that done to be able to help those organizations prosper. The refugee community in the Northwest has really been expanding over the last decade, and it's great to see a whole nother group and set of people come through. I think that we are definitely enriched by having different cultures and different people's experiences that we can learn about and share. And it's part of what makes the city great.
Thank you. Bridget, next question. Interactions between people with mental health issues and the police are a concern across the country. Do you think the Rochester Police Department provides officers with the proper framework to recognize that a person they encounter has a mental health issue and how to deal with it?
There's more that I'll want to dive into once in office about what the police department has been doing. I know certainly the facet teams were helpful, but small enough that they are not always available to be able to go out and deal with an issue that seems to be mental health related. So, a big piece of that is adding in the additional training that can help officers as they're trying to assess situations and who they can call in to come and help. I find that, officers want to be able to deal with these situations in the best way possible and to help de-escalate situations as well, which makes it safer, obviously, for the person who's being pursued, not in a racing way, but who are there having to answer to the police. So I think the mental health aspect is critical, and I would want to be able to get into more of the detail with the police about what trainings they have in progress.
Thank you. Frank.
I think that the RPD does the best job that they can with the training that they have, but the reality is that mental health is such an ever-changing aspect in life that we have people that are dedicated to focus on mental health. And it's important that they have a role, whether it is directly being involved in the training for the RPD or being on hand and on scene. When I was on the county legislature, we pushed $1 million towards the county fit team because we were aware that law enforcement had to respond to these situations, but it would always be better to have someone on hand that specializes in mental health and social work is by their side so they can work hand in hand in coordinating and how to deal with the situation. It's just a reality that things are changing. Technology is taking a different impact on the minds of young people. Even me, I grew up with a flip phone and now we're at smartphones. People had different things. So everything is ever changing and mental health is going to be ever changing. So I don't know if we'll ever really be adequate enough. We would have to make sure that training is constantly updated and mental health providers play a role in that training.
Thank you. Next question, Frank. What is your position on the Police Accountability Board?
I think that the Police Accountability Board is something that community overwhelmingly supported. I supported. I think that the community has expectations for the Police Accountability Board, though, and those expectations thus far haven't necessarily been met. When I was on County Ledge, I was getting calls. I want to report something to the Police Accountability Board. And if I understand correctly, still to this day, they haven't really reviewed any cases. So there needs to be some type of sense of accountability within the Police Accountability Board to get them functioning properly. I do believe it's absolutely necessary, though. It's important to have independent oversight of the RPD, but there needs to be some oversight within the PAB also, because it's starting to be, it's a lot of money going that way, and the expectations when people voted aren't being met, and that's a problem. If an elected official gets voted in and they don't meet expectations, they get voted out. And this is a situation in which we need to make sure we hit those expectations. We do rational and realistic goals with the PAB, and we accomplish what the PAB sets out to do, because it is important and the community does need it.
Bridget.
So certainly in my experience, it's been at least 20 years, probably longer, that Rochesterians have really been pushing for having more transparency in the complaints that they make for police. I would work on some of the documents from the Civilian Review Board, and the Civilian Review Board worked off of the police's professional standards section, and what they would find as they did their investigations into community complaints. From there, the Civilian Review Board would do their work in reviewing the materials submitted, and the Center for Dispute Settlement had a role in this as well, as far as intake. So people could do intake at community, the Center for Dispute Settlement downtown, or they could go to the police station and do it to the professional standards section. And none of those ways did people feel particularly safe or answered. So I am very much in favor of the Police Accountability Board as it was originally intended. Unfortunately, with the other types of personnel problems that were happening, it's really set back what is a critical board. People have the right to know exactly what's going on when they have a complaint, as opposed to having to wait sometimes a year or a year and a half to hear anything about movement on it.
Thank you. Another police question coming from our audience. Bridget, you start. Are you in favor of building a Lake Section police substation at Lake Avenue and Ridge Road?
Yes, I think having a substation that would be right in the district, it is very important. It's another opportunity where officers can be in this one section and start to get to know neighbors and walk beats, even bicycle beats, those types of things where we can start to grow more community dialogue, really.
Frank.
Yes, I am supportive of a Lake Section Police Department. I wish that it did happen when it was proposed the first time. I think it's very important, and it's key to what the community really wants. Just knocking on doors this year in the Charlotte area, the concerns for response time are very heavy. I think having a location that close would help with the response time and really focus on the community that wants to be protected, especially on a stretch like Lake Avenue, that is one of the most dangerous stretches in upstate New York. I think that can do wonders for the Northwest. And it's just a means of protection that I think a lot of people in the Northwest wanted and thought was going to happen.
Okay, next question begins with Frank. This is one from the audience. Do you have a plan for vacant lots?
I think there are so many different things we can do with vacant lots. I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, whether we can get vacant lots in the hands of homeowners that want to flip it and turn it into housing. But I know there are a lot of organizations and non-for-profits and community organizations in the area, Maplewood, Lyle Lotus, Charlotte, that they do things like community gardens. I think we could help promote some of that if we can get that into the right hands. I think the plan should be to get the vacant lots into the right hands with the right plans to make things happen with it, because like I referenced earlier, there's a lot of space and opportunity, especially here in the Northwest. We can really beautify the community and the neighborhoods and make it meaningful by putting housing or a garden or a playground, whatever it may be. Just utilize it. It's a waste of resources and something we definitely should utilize.
Thank you. Bridget.
Vacant lots really need to be doing the work for the neighborhood that they're in. So the use of community gardens, pocket parks, densely treeing the lots just so that the cooling effect can be experienced by people on the street, as well as the cleaner air and, you know, just the sheer beauty of trees. A lot of those lots have been languishing because the city does have, you know, these multiple plans for being able to secure a certain number of vacant lots that they can do infill housing, or if it's a large enough expanse of an area to be able to do a larger development project. But in the interim, there are a lot of areas that have just been sitting vacant and fallow for decades. So definitely we have to use those. They're an eyesore on a street. They have a blighting influence when you just have the bollards on there and then, you know, poor grass. And then the other piece is a lot of those vacant lots are called unbuildable lots. The city has a sheet that they go through, and depending upon the dimensions of the lots, that's how they determine if it could be for housing or commercial. And so many of those are vacant lots that are unbuildable.
Thank you. Next question begins with Bridget, a two-part question. Do you think the city council and the mayor work well together? And what about the city and the county?
I think that they are working well with Malik. I think that my being in office would help Mayor Evans more even. I really work on looking at things evidence-based and data-driven. I enjoy research, and I also really enjoy making connections with people. So as I've been going to the different neighborhood groups and business associations, I'm there to listen, not just to what problems people have and ideas of how they can be addressed, but also I'm getting great ideas from people who just have some great ideas to share. So I've really been enjoying that part. So yes, I believe that I could do more with Mayor Evans, and I apologize that I have lost track of what the second part of the question was.
The city and the county.
Oh, yes. So I think we have a great opportunity right now with having Adam Bello. And for a while there, we would have had the opportunity for a supermajority within the county legislature. But unfortunately, a number of Democrats decided to peel off from the party and not let that happen. But I'm hopeful with the new elections that we can continue to be able to really go forward and take care of those things that historically the county hadn't. You know, it was kind of turning its back on the city, blaming poverty on the city, and I think really doing more to segregate the city from the rest of the county. So I think we can really work together now.
Thank you. And Frank.
I believe that the city council and mayor's office do work well together. All we hear is the contentious parts that make the news, but I do think for a strong mayor-run city council does a pretty decent job upholding what he wants to accomplish. There's some pushback here and there, but I think the mayor's doing a good job. In terms of city and county, I think with the change of the county executive, and even back when Mayor Warren was in office, that relationship really, really blossomed. And I was able to play a part in that because for the first time ever, we did the the City County Commission on Racial and Structural Equity. I was one of the county ledge representatives from the county, where I worked with city council members and I worked with the mayor's office and the county exec to propose life-changing things for our community that we've been struggling with since Rochester's been in existence. So I think we've seen growth from that. It started already. The growth in the relationship is even stronger now, and it's only going to make the city-county relationship better. And I think me being involved in that with the relationships I have in the county now and with the relationships I have with the current city council, I think we'd be able to make that even better.
Thank you. Next question for Frank. For starters, where do you stand on the proposed business improvement districts?
I think that the community needs to be a lot more heavily involved in the business districts. I think the community has always been left behind in terms of the developments that's going on, especially downtown. I think that we need to see more development around other areas that have been stagnating, and the community has expressed it. I've met with, and I've talked to hundreds of people at the doors. The closer you get to the downtown area, just we want to have a say. We want to be able to change the minds of the plans in existence. We want to have a role in what happens in the areas and the neighborhoods that we live in. So I think whatever we do with it, I think that community needs to be put on the forefront for any decisions made going forward.
Thank you. Bridget.
So as I understand this, right now there is concern about a business improvement district happening downtown. And what the business improvement districts do is that they're kind of, they kind of have their own little status within state law that gives the area businesses the ability to pay some extra taxes and then also unroll a plan of how they want the areas that they are in to look and feel. Right now, I know that there's one out there where there are different people who are highly concerned that there will be too many things put out there that are set up to keep anyone from hanging around, or possibly from homeless people being able to find space to be on the street if that's where they are. And it's a really complicated situation. So I think it's since this has to go through city council, that it is incumbent upon city council then to look at this very carefully and make sure that we are hearing from all sides of the issue, because only by having that can we really determine what's the best way to proceed.
Thank you. Next question, we start with Bridget. What do you think about proposals to take over the functions of RG&E and put them under public auspices?
So I have some mixed thoughts about that. While I do believe that what's happening with RG&E right now and the billing problems has been inexcusable, I also would have wanted to see the state's Public Service Commission really come to the table and take RG&E to task. That's a real problem on the state level as far as the oversight they're supposed to have of our utilities. But as we look to the ask right now is currently, like $500,000, $500,000 coming from the city and $500,000 coming from the county. And given the variety of things that we're dealing with now, not the least of which is this increase in violence that isn't just Rochester, it's in cities around the nation. But I'm not sure that $500,000 might not be the best time for the city to be spending that. And again, that $1 million estimation is simply for the study. The regulations that go into our utilities are so dense and complicated. You need to have specialized people who have been in the business for a long time, lawyers, regulators. I don't think that the study would necessarily be done in $1 million. And that's just the study. And unfortunately, the one other area in New York that has done this ultimately turned around and made a contract with another public utility. So I don't know that is the best direction.
Thank you. Frank.
I think before making a decision on an actual takeover, the implementation study needs to happen. Where the money comes from, I don't know. Maybe the state can pick that up. I don't know if that's necessarily something that city council or the county should do necessarily. I mean, it's beyond just Rochester, but I do believe that some of the mistakes and the mishandlings that RG&E has made, they're just unacceptable. And even a study, if that corrects them and the study proves it's not viable, but that lights a fire under them to not make those mistakes again, I think that's still a win. I think that I got overcharged. My bill was very high. So I just don't think that they should be able to get away with making a mistake like that, hurting people in the community. And then when the community stands up and says that they want change or something needs to be addressed, I think it's our job to listen to them.
Okay, next question for Frank. This comes from our audience. Any plans to end the speeding and accidents on Lake Avenue?
I think that there's a stretch on Lake Avenue that I almost got hit by a car knocking on doors. But there's a couple stretches of miles of road where there's no lights, there's nothing stopping people from speeding up and down. And I think even throwing up a light or considering that can help potentially reduce that. I think following complete streets for Lake Ave, if that's viable, could potentially help with the speeding in Lake Avenue. And then just the areas. There's a study that just happened in the county that's looking at Lake Ave and how much money can be put into it. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, Lake Ave is one of the most dangerous roads in upstate New York. And I think that there needs to be a plan and resources in addressing that issue, whether it be lights or a stop sign or something, just something to kind of get people to pump their brakes a little bit. No pun intended.
Thank you. Bridget.
I think a first hands-on approach, and I know that we were down about 65 officers is the last that I've heard. But, we need to be able to have police out there who are watching and pulling people over and giving them those tickets. The speeding has really gotten out of control with COVID. And Lake Avenue is very dangerous. Dewey Avenue is another corridor that is very dangerous. And we shouldn't have any kind of tolerance for people who are blasting through red lights, who are speeding. And then the number of pedestrians who have been killed in the last couple of years is horrifying. We really have to make that a priority. And one of the ways would be to be able to have police stops, or in some of those working with other agencies, if sheriffs are also working and able to do those kinds of things, that's important.
Okay, next for Bridget, while we're on roads, the filling in of the inner loop was a once in a generation chance to undo the mistakes of urban renewal in Rochester. What lessons do you take from the first half of the project to inform the remaining portion?
Certainly doing that has made such a great difference, because when we were such a large factory town and the way we were dealing with cars and suburbs back then, we made it as easy and as efficient as possible, basically, for people to get in and out of the city directly to their jobs. And as things have deteriorated, it then became a way for people to pop in and out, but never having to really interact in the city or work with the businesses there and become a part of the whole city atmosphere. What we've learned from filling in the inner loop is that we can really add some exciting things between the housing and then the mix there with some low affordable housing with the market rate housing, in addition to the bars and restaurants and things like that have been added. And I believe as we continue to get rid of and move away from the inner loop, that we have even more opportunities. For instance, World of Inquiry School is right on the edge of the inner loop. They are a K through 12 school. They do well with their graduation rates, and they have no fields. They don't have anything there because they're in such a landlocked situation. But as we go to fill in those other parts of the inner loop, that would be a great opportunity for them to be able to add sports and have that kind of activity right at their campus.
Frank.
I think with the filling in of the inner loop, I agree that there are a lot of very exciting things that have happened with filling it in. I think it kind of touches on something we talked about earlier, that as we move forward in filling in the rest of it, that the community plays a role in how that looks. I don't really know the utilization of everything that is going on in the inner loop now, but there's some beautiful, beautiful things. Road of Inquiry is great. A lot of the things that have happened in the inner loop have seemed to be very productive. And I think the more we can kind of focus on some of the community around and the people who struggle around and have them have some input and implement things that cater to them, I think the next phase in filling in the inner loop can be even bigger and better.
Okay, this question we start with you, Frank. Let's talk about youth. There is a great concern about getting our youth positively engaged. A two-part question. If funding was not an issue, do you see successful programs in Rochester that should be expanded? Or do you see successful programs in other cities that should be adopted here? And how should the city fund those programs?
I think if funding wasn't a problem, there are many programs that can be successful. Me personally, I was an Edgerton Rec Center kid in the Northwest. The community over there is what made me who I am. We don't see, like, we have a huge, like, vacant area of lack of recreation centers and outlets for our youth to enjoy spaces, especially as you head up into the Charlotte area. Southern School used to be one, but it's no longer one. I think we really need to find the resources to bring community back and give our youth an outlet, and funding for that is important. I think on top of that, the idea that the mayor proposed a few years ago now with getting our youth employed is key. And that used to go hand in hand, because I know so many of my friends growing up, their first job was just being able to help other kids within the rec centers. And that's how I grew up and learned the neighborhoods. And that's where my best friends are, and where this community really, it's changed since then. It doesn't feel as safe anymore. There's a disconnect. And I think that has a huge relationship in the lack of resources invested in our youth. So finding the resources is important, and it needs to come from somewhere to be able to address it and help our youth, because we are seeing the youth in our community turn to some bad things, and we're seeing it day in day. And that's just something we need to focus on and change for the long run and the better of this community, especially in the Northwest.
Bridget.
So if we were able to add youth recreation and didn't have to worry about the funding, I think there's so many exciting things that we could do, including being able to have more treat and wildlife type spots that kids can learn more about nature, the biology and the chemistry that's associated with it. There have been some great ideas for youth recreation outdoors. One I had read about somewhat recently was using a building space for kids. So it was kind of a large yard area, but they had wood and nails and hammers and things, so they could just mess around, build, see what these kinds of tools do. And we're talking at like a really young age too. I think something like that would be incredible. Given the fact that funding is an issue, however, a big piece is to take a look at how we want to spend our consolidated community development funds, which is several $1 million that come from the federal government every year. And that's a place where we're able to decide what specific types of programs that are unique to Rochester, the things that we want to do with that money, as opposed to having it be a conscripted kind of a funding source that tells us what we have to do.
Thank you. Last question. Bridget, we start with you. What can be done to address the disparities in lifespan and health status for Rochester's highest and lowest income zip codes?
Sure. Again, that was going to be a big effort, continuing with collaborations. The city has a lot of nonprofit organizations to continue to work towards not having replication of services, but being able to fill these different areas where people need health care to be able to increase their lifespan. The need for improved housing. Certainly we know that housing can exacerbate or even create children's asthma conditions. While we've made great strides in drastically reducing really the childhood lead levels, that it's still an issue. It's still something we need to work on. Again, we have such an old stock of housing in the city that has to be dealt with, and dealt with in a positive way with rehabilitation. Having our free clinics out there is very important, because it's still not, we're not running such that everybody has the healthcare that they should be having through the Affordable Care Act. And another way is, teen pregnancy is something that we really need to address. It's gone down a lot in the last decade, but, in 2019, we had 232 teen girls give birth. Once those kids get up to kindergarten age, that would be, 11 kindergarten classes full of children from teen moms. And those children have other impacts between health and school.
Thank you. Frank.
I think this is a great last question, especially for us in the Northwest, because when you look at the Northwest, we have some of the highest income zip codes in our northern parts. And then we have some of our lowest income areas in our southern parts, in the inner city. So addressing that and closing the gap is key. I think we do that just by improving resources and accessibility to different things. Bridget touched on healthcare. We need to improve the accessibility of healthcare, especially in our areas down south that don't have a lot of places to go or may not have healthcare. Food deserts. We have one major supermarket in the inner city area over here, and other than that, you have to go far away, and it's not even the best supermarkets that we can have. Access to fresh foods isn't abundant as it should be. It's 2023. That shouldn't be an issue. I think that we address that by really focusing in on some of the lower income and preventing the struggles that we see day to day from filtering out further and further. And I think that's what we are seeing. We struggle in the inner city, and that impact ripples out, and it continues to ripple out unless we address it from the heart and the core of where it is.
Thank you. So that completes our question and answer portion of this forum. We now go to closing statements. Each candidate has 2 minutes. We go in alphabetical order. So Frank, you're up.
So I think we are living in some really challenging times, especially when it comes to elected officials in Rochester. I think it's really time for us to listen to the youth and allow young leaders to step up with some new vision and some new means of getting things done. I can ensure residents in the Northwest that I'll advocate for jobs and workforce development like I have done already. I will engage the youth because that's where my heart is, and that's what I've done my entire life. And the community needs to feel safe. Having been born in Northwest Rochester, I think that the lived experience that I have will help lead and guide this community. And I think that's what we really need. I stand on the shoulders of my parents and other people who have believed in me. When my parents came to the United States in 1980 from Laos, they had no choice. It was life or death for them. They literally would not be alive had they not been brought to the United States, and they were placed in Rochester. And they somehow chose Northwest Rochester that has grown a huge piece of my heart. I'm gracious for them and the opportunities that they've given me, the perseverance and the humility that they've given me. They taught me how to be gracious and work hard and make change. That's what I want to do. I know they're proud of me, and I don't want to be an anomaly in Northwest Rochester. I want to be someone that people can look at and say, hey, I grew up with him and he did this and he's making change. He didn't give up on this area. I truly believe that the Northwest can become a beacon of light from the Charlotte Lighthouse all the way down to my home in La Lotus, down to Josana in Dutchtown. I think that we can really highlight and make Northwest Rochester a better place and a stronger, safer quadrant all throughout, instead of just some pockets. I want to thank you guys for allowing us this opportunity, and I hope I was able to earn the support of some of the viewers on tonight. So thank you for hosting us and giving us this platform to address some of these issues.
Thank you. Bridget.
So as Frank was saying, certainly the worry over safety in the Northwest is great, and the conditions of our neighborhoods have really been declining for quite some time now. So my top priorities are going to be to improve housing and expand home ownership, to reduce gun violence, to ensure that we do have youth programs that are available throughout the Northwest and really fill in those gaps that we have. And I'll also do an excellent job in financial oversight of the city. That's a key piece of what City Council has to do. And without having a solid financial house in order, there's no foundation upon which we can build our future. In City Council, I'm also really determined to unravel all of the systems that have gone into place that have left us living in a place that is so starkly segregated by income and race. Breaking down those barriers, knowing what they are, and then changing them is going to be critical in helping the Northwest as well as the entire city. I also want to shine a light on the domestic violence and things that are happening to women and what that community consequence is from having that level of trauma going through generations upon generations. By putting a light on that, I think that we will also, obviously save lives of the women who are being abused, but also to save the children who end up in households where these things are happening. It makes sense that there's so much anger out there and hurt. And these levels of disparity they can't continue, and they shouldn't. So these are the things that I will definitely have at the front of what I will be working on in City Council. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much to our candidates, Frank Fetlasi and Bridget Monroe. Thank you to our audience and for submitting your good questions. And with that, I turn it back to Barbara.
Okay, I want to add my thanks to Karen, to both of you for coming on tonight and giving us a chance to ask our questions. Once again, I'll repeat that this has been recorded and it will be put on YouTube, so it'll be available for anyone else who didn't make it tonight or anyone that you want to share it with. So some reminders. First of all, make sure that your voter registration is up to date. If you've moved since the last election, you should re-register so that you can vote in the right place. If you want to vote by absentee ballot, you need to apply for it in advance. Early voting begins on June 17th. I think there are 14 early voting sites, and you can go to any one of them. There's a 10-day period, 9-day period. And then finally, election day is June 27th. You should be getting a postcard from the Board of Elections telling you where to vote. Soon we will have live our online voter guide, Vote 411. It's not there yet, so don't look tonight, but soon it will be available. So you can learn more about these candidates and all the other candidates who will be on your ballot. And it's especially great because a lot of people don't know what districts they live in. And if you just put your address in at Vote 411, it will figure out your ledge district and your city council district and everything else. So that's all we've got tonight. If you need to contact us, there's our contact information. And once again, thanks everyone for turning out tonight.